But then there are also times where that empathy kind of undermines you a little bit. And so to give you an example, Susan, um, very often cancers have trouble asserting boundaries.
We say yes to everything, even
Bingo.
at work, and then we're so overstressed and we can't stop and we end up working way too long. Yeah, yeah,
And you end
definitely.
up in martyrdom.
Oh, yeah, and then getting angry and feeling resentful of other people because we're still working. Yep, yeah, I know that.
Yeah. And then eventually unleashing,
Yeah, yeah, because then it
feeling
boils
bad
out.
for it, feeling
Why
bad
did I
for it
say
after,
that? Yep.
and determining that next time you're not going to say anything, which actually just leads to a greater buildup and thus a greater explosion later.
What if the struggles you think are bad luck are actually part of design, encoded in your birth chart, reflected in the tarot, rooted in ancient Hermetic wisdom? Aleksandra Ceho helps people understand their patterns, their timing, and their power, not to escape life, but to master it. Alexandra, welcome to Five Flavors of Happiness. I am so happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Susan. It is so wonderful to be here.
Well, I have to ask you the most important question. I always start with it, and that's your journey. How did you discover astrology and tarot and Hermetic philosophy? How did this happen?
Well, we have to go back a number of decades. Not too many, but a couple at least. So my grandfather was actually an amateur astrologer, and
Oh,
my grandparents lived 2 hours north of Toronto, where it's just marshy, swampy land. So even playing outside wasn't all that much fun.
mm.
So instead of going outside, I would go and steal my grandfather's astrology books. And I would read about Athena and Ares and Aphrodite and Zeus and all of the Greek gods and goddesses because their stories were in his books. And I fell in love with them. There was something just really resonant about them. And so every time we went to my grandparents' house, I'd go steal his books. I'd go lock myself in the guest bedroom where there were also a ton of snacks. Uh, and I would have the time of my life. And so that started my love affair of astrology, and so, I began learning around 5 or 6 years old because basically the minute I started learning how to read was when I started, putting my nose into astrology books, and I very often had a dictionary right beside me to help me understand the words that I didn't know yet. Um, so my love affair with astrology has been lifelong. And of course, as I grew up, I continued my studies through books I could find in the library, the early GeoCities pages of the internet, if you happen to remember those.
Remember the library and your library card?
Yeah. So,
Yes.
and then from there, I started studying tarot when I was in my teens. And when I was in university, I actually discovered a really amazing place called the Modern Mystery School. And that was where I began diving into Hermetic philosophy, working with the elements, working with ritual and ceremonial magic, so that I could learn how to master my own energy field. Because I was very empathic growing up, which sometimes made things a bit difficult. And so in mastering my own energy field, I was inspired to learn more and more and more, and I ended up becoming a practitioner, and, today I'm actually an international instructor specializing in astrology and tarot as well, still teaching with the Modern Mystery School 20 years later.
Wow. So how did that go over with mom and dad?
Well, my father wasn't so much into, anything spiritual. So so he wasn't a fan, but, my mother had, of course like, it was her father, my
Okay.
maternal grandfather, and so my mother was always very spiritual herself, so for her, it was like, "Okay, great, you have something you're interested in, have
Right.
at it," right? So, there was always a little bit of a juxtaposition of one parent being very encouraging, whereas the other was kind of like,
Mm.
this stuff isn't gonna make you any money. That was always his
Oh,
his thing.
right. Right. For me, it was art and design. It's not gonna make you any money. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and so, I mean, I can understand his concerns, right? But, I ended up in healthcare initially and, in my early 20s, and that didn't work out for me. Part of it was I wasn't exactly inspired and motivated by it. Even though I loved helping people, it just wasn't the right way to help them for me. And so I chose to move on and do something else and do something that I love. And that was how I ended up becoming a practitioner, facilitating energy healings for people and doing astrology readings. So I mean, it was my passion anyways, and I loved doing it. And I think that because I was so passionate, word spread fairly quickly. And so even though I had taken a massive risk, like, leaving healthcare, leaving, steady jobs and that
Sure.
kind of thing, um, I don't regret it.
Right. Because you found your purpose.
I found my purpose and
Absolutely.
I get to do something I love every day. And
Well, I
I meet
love
amazing
that.
people doing it.
That is so beautiful. Now tell me about, because guys, we talked about this earlier, and forgive my ignorance. So I saved the question for us being live. What is Hermetic philosophy?
So, kind of linking back to my studies with the modern mystery school here, they come from a lineage that dates back to the times of King Solomon and even further to a legendary figure named Hermes Trismegistus. And so anything hermetic is referring to Hermes
Oh,
himself. And Hermetic philosophy is it's quite ancient actually, several thousand years old. And a lot of it is what underlies um, our modern religions, actually. And so, Hermetic philosophy really teaches us about the forces that lie behind reality, how things come to be. So, as an example, one of the Hermetic principles is the law of cause and effect. For every cause, there is an effect, but for every effect, you can link it back to a cause. And so these 7 hermetic principles help us to understand how things come to be and how we manifest our reality. And so one of the basic principles of a hermetic philosophy is that you are a creator.
mhm. I love that.
That that what happens in your life is the result of your creations. And as you purify your connection and master your relationship to these hermetic principles, you can manifest, basically a better reality, more loving, more abundant, more kind, more joyful. And so when you work with hermetic philosophy, it really gives you a chance to purify some of the mental constructs that you have and to challenge um, notions that have held your life kind of stuck or prisoner or stagnant. And so I've really loved working with Hermetic philosophy. And astrology is a huge part of it because astrology also came from Hermes Trismegistus himself. And so when you work with these Hermetic principles, you really have a chance to alter the reality that you're constructing, the life that you've built. And it's a really powerful thing, and many of us have connection to these hermetic principles through our intuition.
So, how? Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So let's go back to cause and effect, right?
Okay.
How many times have Susan, how many times have you felt that something was going to happen even though you couldn't necessarily explain the logic of it?
Oh, a bunch. Sure, of course.
Tons of times,
Right.
right? And so it's not like, like, let's say, for example, you were watching somebody shoot a basketball. Well, it's not like your mind was doing the mental calculations of the arc of the ball and the speed of its travel and the angle upon which it was released, right? It's not like you were doing those mental mathematics, right? You weren't necessarily calculating um the rate at which, this particular person tends to get it in the basket. So you weren't calculating that person's statistics and probabilities. There's just this feeling that, yes, he's gonna get it he's
Mhm.
gonna get it in the hoop. So we all have a relationship to all 7 of the Hermetic principles. And very often, it is our relationship with those Hermetic principles that informs our intuition. So to give you a different example, right? How many times have you thought something and then known it's going to happen?
I have. I've had that experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now here's the question. Did you think it because you were tuned into the universal mind and therefore knew it was going to happen? Or did you think it and thus create it?
I don't know.
Maybe a bit of both. And that's really a case by case basis, right? So we all have that connection to all 7 of these energetic forces that create the reality that we're in. And the stronger our connection, the more intuitive and in tune we become, and the easier it is to navigate challenges, but also to build and create good things too.
So what are the 7?
Okay, well, you have the Hermetic principle of mentalism. So the all is mind, right? So what your mind thinks, you create.
Okay.
Um, we have the Hermetic principle of um, gender. So there are male and female energies. Or you could think of them as active and passive or receptive, right?
Okay.
You have the Hermetic principle of, let me see here, where's my brain? Rhythm. So the Hermetic principle of rhythm, is certainly one of the guiding forces of astrology, right? Because rhythm includes cycles. And so we have moon cycles, we have the cycles of the planets as they move around, creating transits,
Right.
right? There are certain transits that are kind of a little more famous than others, such as the Saturn return.
Right,
Um,
right.
so those are all aspects of the Hermetic principle of rhythm. But then we all have our own personal rhythms too, right? And so an example of that is every one of us has our own psychological triggers and buttons. And
Mhm.
and so when someone, pushes those psychological triggers or buttons, there's a predictable behavior that
Oh,
happens as a
sure.
result of that,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
and and very often someone who's very intuitive can recognize those in others as well,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So then there is the Hermetic principle of polarity. And the Hermetic principle of polarity is something actually very active in the world today. The degree to which the pendulum swings to the right is the degree to which it swings to the left.
Oh, yes. Yes, I could definitely see that in our world right
Mm.
now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's kind of interesting because um, we're becoming more polarized.
Mhm.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. The trouble is we've thrown a lot of judgment in there with it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so we're throwing sticks and stones at each other, on the opposite sides of
Sure.
the pendulum swing. I don't want to say the fence because that creates separation. And the Hermetic principle of polarity says that there's no separation. It's just that things are different by degree, right? So hot and cold are simply differences of degree in temperature. So they're one thing. They're not
Right.
separate.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we were one people rather than all of the separation that we have going on right now?
But we are. That's the thing. At the heart of everything, let me ask you this question, Susan. Who in this world wakes up and doesn't want good relationships? Doesn't want to be able to provide for themselves and their loved ones? Who doesn't want to contribute to the world? Who doesn't want to have laughter and smiles and loving people in their lives? Nobody. We all have a heart.
Right.
It
Of course.
it's just that we disagree on how to have all those things.
Hmm. Oh, so true.
And then we make each other enemies because of that, because of the disagreement.
So let me ask you, are these disagreements? Because I feel like, in my view of the world, I feel like all my challenges and struggles I mapped out before I came here. And maybe some of those are disagreements uh, on the pendulum. Are they in our birth chart? Can you read it in astrology?
So to a certain degree, yes, actually. So let me give you an example, Susan. When's your birthday?
June 23rd.
Okay, you're a Cancer, but you're on the
I am
cusp
a
of
Cancer.
Gemini.
I am on the cusp. I'm right there. Sometimes I feel like I'm Gemini.
Well, you know what? You could have planets in Gemini, and so you could also have like a strong resonance to that energy as well if you have other planets sitting there, because Mercury and Venus are never far from the sun.
Mm,
So if you actually get your natal chart, you might notice that you have planets sitting there because you're right at, close to the beginning of Cancer there. Um, so let's work with Cancer energy. Okay.
sure.
So Cancer is one of the mothers of the zodiac wheel. And it's specifically the newborn mother, or the mother of the newborn, I should say. And so it's this very tender, loving energy. If you picture a mother, clasping the newborn to her breast, that imagery and all that it means and all that entails is literally the perfect representation of the beauty of Cancer's energy.
Oh, that's so lovely.
And Susan, you're a mother. So
Mhm.
I want you to take yourself back a number of years to when your children were newborns. Did you not feel a very strong intuitive connection with them?
Absolutely, 100%.
You knew when they were good, you knew when they were off, you knew when something was wrong.
100%. Could
So,
feel everything.
yes. So, Cancer is a very empathic sign. And there's whether you're a Cancer or not, every mother has that kind of connection.
Right.
Right? So Cancer symbolizes that motherly power of intuitive connection or empathy, right? And that is one of the struggles that is often mapped out in the chart, because part of why you are here is to master that empathy, because there are times it works incredibly well for you, and then there's times it kind of kicks you in the behind. So So when it works well for you, of course, you are deeply understanding and compassionate, and hold that mother energy and support for everyone you come in contact with. And that's a beautiful thing and very needed in the world, by the way. But then there are also times where that empathy kind of undermines you a little bit. And so to give you an example, Susan, um, very often cancers have trouble asserting boundaries.
We say yes to everything, even
Bingo.
at work, and then we're so overstressed and we can't stop and we end up working way too long. Yeah, yeah,
And you end
definitely.
up in martyrdom?
Oh, yeah, and then getting angry and feeling resentful of other people because we're still working. Yep, yeah, I know that.
Yeah. And then eventually unleashing,
Yeah, yeah, because then it
feeling
boils
bad
out.
for it. feeling
Why
bad
did I
for it
say
after,
that? Yep.
and determining that next time you're not going to say anything, which actually just leads to a greater buildup and thus a greater explosion later.
Ah, wow. So you're able to see all of that just by my sign. Holy cow. That's incredible.
So, the key here, because part of the reason you often don't um, enforce boundaries, it's twofold. I mean, does the mother of a newborn get to hold boundaries with a newborn child? You know,
No.
it, stop crying. I want to go to sleep.
Yeah,
It
no, we
doesn't
can't.
work that way. We would not survive as as a
As a
race of human
right?
beings, right? So it doesn't work that way. So there's this aspect of the mother of the newborn that needs to have attachment in order to facilitate growth, right? But then the other piece is that very often you understand why people do what they do and you forgive them before they're actually worthy of forgiveness.
Oh, because of our intuition. So we know, oh, I know they're under stress. I know they didn't mean that. I'm just going to let it go. Oh, wow. Holy cow. It didn't even dawn on me.
And like I said, you end up forgiving them before they're actually worthy of forgiveness, which means that your boundaries get crossed over and over again because you're just continually forgiving.
Oh my God. And I bet you there's something like this that you know for every single sign.
Of course, of
That is
course.
phenomenal.
And I mean that's not the only challenge, but it's certainly one of the primary ones because here's the interesting thing. So Susan, in the realm of spirit, astrology and all of its energies, it's all perfect. There's no downside. Why? Because in spirit, we don't have negative egos. So when we're born into this world, y- you know, we take a perfect energy and we try to adapt it to an imperfect world. And
Mm,
there is a learning curve that comes with it.
so true. So true.
So when you master that empathy and learn, as a result of that, learn how to put up boundaries, you find yourself less resentful, having less blowouts, and also feeling fulfilled by your relationships, right? Because, again, going back to that newborn mother concept, um, the newborn mother is always giving. And
Hmm.
and I mean, of course, there's the certain fulfillment in knowing that you're giving to your child, right? But in terms of the actual relationship dynamics itself, the mother must give. There's nothing the baby can offer in return, right? And that's just, part and parcel of that stage of life. So there's also the downside of not receiving reciprocation in relationships. Oh. So when you start enforcing boundaries, like I said, less resentment, less blowups, um, and then also feeling more fulfilled because in
Good.
holding those boundaries, you start receiving more respectful behavior and your needs start to become part of the equation too.
Wow. Blew my mind. That is good stuff because it's so true. I mean, literally just today, I told somebody no about something that they wanted me to edit into a film. And I was very nervous about saying no. I had a lot of guilt. And then I said I would end up working for another 5 hours just to do this and it's not worth it. So I said no. And they were like, okay. And I was like, oh, they
High
said
five.
okay. And I was like, "Oh, this is so great. Now I could relax." But it was scary. It's scary for
Yeah,
us cancers to do that, to
yeah.
implement that.
But a lot of times people who are asking things like that, They're not attached. They know it's a numbers game. I'm going to quote my mother-in-law here. Monkey knows which limb to climb. So, oh, that's funny. So they often go to the person who they calculate is most likely to say yes first.
Smart little monkey.
Yep, monkey knows
Smart
which
little
limb to climb.
monkey. I like that saying. Oh, I'm gonna use that.
Yep.
So talk to me about how you integrate tarot into astrology and hermetic philosophy. Because I feel like we have the trifecta of awesomeness here.
I love that. Thank you. So, Hermetic philosophy helps you manifest. Astrology helps you to understand yourself, the gifts, the talents, the strengths that you bring with you, and also to understand the challenges so that you can overcome them. Because, I mean, if you overcome your challenges, what's stopping you,
Yeah.
right?
Your own self limitations that we put in front of our own self for no reason.
But when you learn, well, that's kind of like taking off one of the ball and chains that you've been dragging around so you can move so much faster.
Yep.
And every time you do that, you become lighter and freer and more capable
Yep.
because you're not dragging around, so much. And tarot, I particularly love for more situational aspects. So when you're trying to learn about yourself, astrology is an amazing tool. Also, if you're trying to figure out good timing and to strategize based on your goals, astrology is an amazing tool. But then sometimes you come up against situations that perhaps are not necessarily, y- y- you know, indicated by your astrology, or maybe they are, but you haven't checked your transits and what's happening. And you need to understand the energies that are happening underneath of the situation so that you can resolve it and move forward. Right. Let me give you an example, Susan. Let's just say that things are feeling really tense at work.
Okay.
Everyone's on edge. There's an aura of fear when you
Mm,
go into the office,
sure.
and you have no idea why, right? But it's affecting the way your boss is communicating with you. It's affecting, things with your coworkers. And, um, instead of it, say the environment, instead of being normally cooperative, is everyone for themselves.
Oh,
So you've encountered this situation at work. You have no idea what's going on. It is stressing you out because you're very empathic. That's when I would turn to tarot.
okay.
Right? Or um, alternatively, like let's say you've hit the ceiling in your current career.
Okay.
You don't know what to do.
Right, right. Existential crises, we have them all the time. What is my
Yeah.
next move? Yeah,
What's my next move?
absolutely.
What do I do? Do I stay where I'm at and just be comfy?
Mhm.
Or do I consider, jumping ship and going somewhere else? Or do I consider an entirely different career? What do I do? Right. And,
Right.
and so sometimes you come across I literally don't know. And tarot is an amazing tool for that.
So let me ask you, and guys, we're gonna do a 3-card read for all of our listeners. It's coming up. But I have to ask you a question first,
Hmm.
and it's about fate versus free will. So, because I feel like with all these tools, with astrology, I'm learning about who I am.
Mhm.
And it was really interesting because I felt like you read me like a book, you were like, "Yeah, we've been friends for 20 years. I know everything about her just because I said I'm a Cancer." Like, how does she know this? So that's amazing. The Hermetic philosophy was really interesting. And now Tara is helping me make these huge decisions. So, is it fated that I sit with a tarot reader and they tell me and I make this decision? Or is it free will or is it a combination of both?
You can absolutely ignore everything a tarot reader says. It's totally
Okay.
free will.
Okay.
Now,
Awesome.
that being said, um, again, and this is where the Hermetic philosophy and those Hermetic principles play in, right? Because what a tarot reader is meant to do is to help you understand the current energies that you are sitting in or working with and where they are most likely to take you.
Okay, now where they will most likely. Okay, that's a big key difference.
And how do I explain this to you? In life, we're always carving a path forward. And the tarot is meant to help you fill in the gaps in that path, right? So you're laying bricks down for this path, but sometimes there's holes, there's gaps, there's missing understanding. And so tarot is meant to fill in the gaps so that you can continue moving forwards.
So let me ask you, is it our higher self that comes through when you read the cards? Is it the collective? Is it spirit? Is it God? Is it our guardian angels? What helps you read the cards and helps you pull the cards that that person needs to hear? The message that I need to hear, or the collective needs to hear.
So, I mean, there's a lot of different methodologies out there. So I can only speak to mine,
Okay.
right? So when I am working with tarot, I am a conduit for the energies that that person is bringing into the room. And
So
and
you're
of
reading the
course,
person's energies.
kind of,
Okay.
kind of. Um, and of course, like there are spirit guides that are part of this process. And I mean, I do ritual, I do ceremony in terms of preparing myself so that I empty my mind so that I can receive. Because that person also has guides and a higher
Mhm.
self and, and all of these things. And so it can be any number of things that are mediated by the cards.
So do you know your guides' names?
That's not so much the important thing. It's more that I know their voices.
So you can hear them.
Mhm.
Wow. Oh my God, that's so interesting. How can we hear ours?
Well, so I'm going to be honest. For anyone who's listening, there's the Modern Mystery School has a number of amazing classes. Um, so I would definitely encourage people to take a class called Spiritual Intuition.
Okay.
In that class, you actually learn how to build your intuition so that you can begin to hear, to see, to feel. I would also recommend a class called Empower Thyself. And in that class, you're actually given methodologies that you can begin to make contact with your higher self and with your spiritual guides.
Well, that's so awesome. I always feel like, because I go on a lot of walks and I feel like they're really cathartic, and that's where I get all my ideas from. So I feel like that might be my higher self or my spirit guides saying, okay, I can finally talk to her. She's quiet
Yeah.
enough.
And it could also be the elements working with you too, right? Because you're out in nature.
Yes. Yes. Okay, now let's get to the fun stuff. Okay, so guys, I asked Alexandra before we started, I said, "Can you do a 3-card collective for all you listeners out there? What do you need to hear right now?" And she graciously said that she would. So, let's see, what do our listeners need to know?
All right. Well, just give me a moment here while I shuffle the deck. Oh, we've got a jumper. Okay, let's see who's jumping here. Okay. So I have the 7 of Wands here. Um, okay, I will get to that. Let me finish
Take your
shuffling
time.
here.
We will
Um,
wait.
ooh, interesting. It's all fire and water energy today.
Oh,
So I want to talk about the jumper a little bit because it's the 7 of Wands, and the 7 of Wands can indicate indecision. Um, and one of the things that's coming up here is that a lot of people feel like there's a lot to fight off right now. That there's so many things that are calling their attention that they don't even have the time to actually make a decision or or to be thorough in their decision. It's kind of like, okay, well, just do this and then this and this and this and
oh,
this.
sure, sure.
Like it's kind of like this frenetic energy, right? And so one of the things that's coming through here is to step back and to really assess what your priorities are right now and where you need to make decisions. And to be okay with letting other things be what they are. Not everything needs your effort and attention right now. And this is something actually really important for everyone to hear, that that consider your hands magic. Where do you want your magic in your life? And of course, there's a temptation to say everywhere, but you know what? Everywhere does not mean other people's problems and their dramas. Everywhere does not mean applying yourself to things that don't serve you, that don't serve your family, that don't serve your community. Everywhere does not mean whatever's in the media and politics and all those kinds of things. You don't need to make decisions about those things. And those are things that don't build you a better life.
Mhm.
So dismiss those things. Don't let them plague your consciousness. That's actually, perhaps more so than the other cards, the most important thing that's coming through right now. Your hands
Wow.
are magic, and apply them to the areas of your life that matter.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. So I shouldn't be listening to the Prince Andrew gossip and
You know what? You can listen to it, but don't be emotionally invested in it.
Yep, because it doesn't.
There's nothing it can serve you.
Yep. Oh, wow. That's cool. That's excellent.
There's nothing wrong with being informed. Just don't be emotionally invested,
Right, right.
right? Um, Now we have the 8 of Cups coming up here. And it's kind of interesting. It's actually coming up in reverse. So there's this energy of satisfaction that is part of it. But it's the satisfaction that comes upon reflection of what you truly have in life. And especially because this is coming up, in the past here, um, you've already done your introspection. You've and if you haven't, take a little bit of time, but I think almost everyone listening on this call right now has been doing some of that introspection. It's the winter, it's natural to do it anyways. But having done that introspection, it's time to come out of the cave and to appreciate the life and the wonders that exist before you. So the 8 of Cups very often is about going within and going into that introspection and reflection and figuring yourself out and what you value, what you believe, releasing stagnant emotions. But here in this reversed position, it's indicating that too much of that is not a good thing. So it's actually time to emerge from the cage so that you don't end up in what's the word that I'm looking for here? Um, Excessive self consciousness,
Mm.
navel gazing. Because if everything's about you, it's so easy to become miserable. You know, when you
Oh,
become wrapped up in your feelings
right.
and all you can consider is your feelings, the end product of that is misery.
Oh,
So emerge from the cave of feelings and appreciate the wonders of life that are out there. That's
that's
what it's time
beautiful.
for.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Now we have the 3 of Cups here, and I love the 3 of Cups, and, it's this energy of synergy and harmony, and the joy that comes from creating together and having reciprocal relationships, right? So what's coming through right now is that it's time to really purify and appreciate the relationships that you have in your life. So there's so much talk about toxic relationships and how to recognize toxic relationships and red flags and warning signs and all of these things. But what's missing and what is so important right now to have a fulfilled heart is to acknowledge human goodness, to acknowledge the goodness in the people who are an everyday part of your life. You know, what do you appreciate about your partner? What do you appreciate about your family? What do you appreciate about your boss and your coworkers and your neighbor and all of these people? Because if the devil was to march up to you right now and ask, "Are these people good people?" I'm sure most of you would say yes. If tasked with answering with the truth. But sometimes we forget each other's goodness. And
Hmm.
in forgetting each other's goodness, it sours relationships. So the task of the present moment is to see the goodness and to embrace the goodness in the people who are part of your everyday life so that there's more abundance, there's more joy, and there's more love floating all around you.
Oh, that's so nice because we so easily will complain rather than say something beautiful.
Yeah. And our last card here, Susan, is the Ace of Wands in reverse. And in the tradition that I work with, reversed cards have multiple meanings, and so sometimes it means something won't happen. Sometimes it means too much of, or in this case, as I feel with it, it means delay. So I
Okay.
have the Ace of Wands delayed, the energy of rebirth delayed, and the work of the first 2 cards coming out of the cave and appreciating the wonders of your life and the 3 of Cups, um, acknowledging, harmonizing, embracing the goodness of the people in your life, this is going to lead to a rebirth. And in this rebirth, that's where you're actually going to see your own power. This is where passion will come from, power, creativity, strength. It will all come from stepping outside of the temptation to be drawn in by your emotions and feelings and to co-create goodness with others, that's what will lead to rebirth.
Thank you. Oh, wow, what a treat. Thank you so much for that reading. Oh, I hope you enjoyed it, guys. I totally loved it. That was amazing. Now, before we let you go, I have to ask you one final question that I ask all my guests.
Okay.
As now for you, it's gonna be really interesting because you know so much. I feel like you are a spiritual guru. So what is happiness for you?
Happiness for me is being in love with life.
Yes. Yes. And it's just how do we get there?
Well, how you get there is knowing yourself,
Mhm.
honoring yourself through the actions and decisions you take, having gratitude for everything and everyone around you. Anything we do in this world is literally a miracle.
Right.
If you think about it, Susan, I mean, how many things had to go right for you and I to have this conversation right
Right?
now?
It was all so serendipitous
Yeah,
or divine.
absolutely. And I mean, even just the basics, like right now, my internet needs to be working, and so does yours. We both need to have electricity. The recording platform that we're using needed to be working. Right? I mean, if we go electricity, well, my city's power grid needs to be up, and so does yours, but it's a snowstorm and yet it's still here, right? So anything we do, there's so many things that have to go right. And and it's so easy to feel victim in this world because there's just so much that is telling you that you're a victim. And and that mindset completely negates the possibility for real happiness, for joy. And so when you start acknowledging the goodness in your world, when you start seeing the light of things and falling in love with your life and loving it no matter what happens, that's happiness.
Perfect way to end our conversation. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you so much for being here. And guys, I'm going to drop all of Alexandra's links in the description below, including the cool link to that school. Because those are those classes online? Can people take them all over the
So they're
world?
they're actually in person,
Okay,
but
so,
there are practitioners all over the world.
okay, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again. And guys, if you like this conversation, help out the channel and like and subscribe so that I can keep bringing you even more awesome podcasts. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you on the next episode of Five Flavors of Happiness.